In this video, I'm going to show you how I filled the boring empty space under my TV with this DIY floating mantle slash shelf that I built using some inexpensive lumber from Home Depot. And after getting it assembled, it'll look something like this. And the best part, you might ask, it's about a fraction of the cost of what you buy online. Thanks to Basecamp for sponsoring the video, and let's get into it. So for this project, I started by modeling the floating shelf slash mantle in SketchUp, and based on the size of mantle I'm trying to build, I'm going to use 2x10s for the top and bottom and a 2x6 for the front and sides. And I also put together a PDF that you can download below that has the dimensions and a few more tips and tricks for how to build this. But as you can see from the model, this is based on a 45-degree miter design, where we're going to miter the top and bottom to be identical mirror images, and then we're going to miter the sides and the front, again at 45-degree angles, so that everything will fit together once we assemble it. Hopefully you understand the design intent. Now let's get to cutting. To cut my 45-degree miters, I went with probably the least precise method on the planet, which was taking my circular saw, adjusting the guide so it was at 45 degrees, and then running it along my 2x10x6 piece of lumber, which is going to make the top of my mantle. After cutting the 45-degree miter lengthwise, I moved to the first side, cut a 45-degree angle, then I moved to the other side and repeated that exact same process. After cutting all three sides of the top board at a 45-degree angle, I switched over to the bottom board and repeated that exact same process. Again, the top of this mantle and the bottom of this mantle are identical, they're just mirrored for the top and bottom. After cutting all three sides of the bottom board, I used the total length of the bottom board to scribe along my 2x6, which is going to make the front. This ended up being right around 6 feet, and I made that cut using a circular saw. Next, we're going to cut the 45-degree miters on the front board, but if you remember from the model, each side of this front board is going to receive a 45-degree cut so that it fits with the top and bottom and eventually the sides that we're going to create. So just run that circular saw along just like we did before at a 45-degree angle on all four sides of the front board. Next, you can use the width of the top and bottom boards to mark the depth for the side boards. In my case, that ended up being around 9¼ inches. Then I cut that to length using the circular saw, again, at a 45-degree angle where appropriate based on the model. These smaller pieces were a little bit sketchy to cut, so a table saw is really just a better way to do this if you have one. The cuts are going to be more accurate, and it'll probably be safer as well. And after cutting this last side piece, we've successfully cut all 5 pieces that are going to make up this floating mantle. Now we can build the hanging bracket. For this design, I used a 2x4 for the hanging bracket, and I cut it a few inches shy of the floating mantle length, so it would fit inside. Now, as we're making these cuts, I want to give a huge shout out to Basecamp for sponsoring this video. I've been using the Basecamp respirator masks since I first bought them back in 2021, and they're super comfortable, easy to use, and I basically wear this whenever I'm cutting lumber or sanding, anything where I need to protect my lungs. And by the way, I'm cutting these pieces of blocking at around 3½ inches, so the total depth is 5. And I especially want to thank Basecamp because they hooked me up with around 8 to 10 masks that I'm going to be giving away to you all as a giveaway. Just drop a comment down below saying what project you're going to need a respirator for, and I'll randomly select a few of you to receive these masks. I'll link these down below if you want to check them out, and they're going to be releasing a new improved version, and by improved, I mean they're just going to have a more secure strap that goes around on top for those heavy-duty jobs. Let's get back to it. Okay, so now that we have all these individual pieces cut, now what? Well, now we gotta assemble everything. So I took the top, the bottom, and the front piece of the mantle, attached some painter's tape to the back side, and then I flipped it over. Now, you might be asking yourself, why on earth did you do that? And honestly, I don't know. Just in my mind, I thought it was gonna be easier to put the tape on the bottom and then try to flip it over so that I could apply wood glue in between both of those 45-degree miters so that in the next step, when I fold everything up, that glue will be right in between the miter and hopefully hold it in place for the rest of its lifetime on my wall. And after fighting to get the last little bit of wood glue out of that bottle, I folded up the top and then the bottom, and I made sure it was at a perfect 90-degree angle before taking some painter's tape and holding it in place at that 90-degree angle so that I could free my hands up to move over to the side. Now the sides here have 3 mitered edges that we're going to need to line up, so I did a quick test fit, and surprise, surprise, a circular saw is not the most precise way to cut 45-degree miters, so it definitely wasn't a perfect fit, so I just took some wood glue, made it fit as best as possible, and pushed it in place. And just like I did for the top, bottom, and front, I used some painter's tape to hold the side in place. And after repeating that process on the other side, I took my brad nailer and I installed brad nails about every 16 inches on those miters to permanently hold everything in place, because wood glue alone is definitely not going to cut it. And after letting the glue set up overnight, I went back with some wood filler because those miters were pretty bad in some spots. And obviously a table saw is going to give you much more precise miters and you're going to have to do a lot less touch-up work, but Most people have a circular saw, and not a lot of people have a table saw, but you're gonna have to go back like I am now with 120 grit sandpaper and sand down all those rough edges and all of that wood filler that you use to fill the gaps in the miters. And be sure to sand the face of the wood too, not just the miters, to give yourself a nice smooth finish. And after sanding down the mantle/shelf, you want to finish it using some kind of stain or a paint. Here I went with a weathered oak look stain and applied that to the entire mantle, front, bottom, sides, etc., using a cloth. I went with this weathered oak so it would match a barn door that I have inside, but stain it any color you want. Okay, after staining, we'll let this dry for a few hours and then we'll go ahead and mount it inside. But before we can hang the mantle, we need to attach our mounting bracket to the wall. And to do that, I first established a level line using a laser level, then I found the stud locations using the stud buddy, and then I marked all the stud locations using a pencil. Next up, I took my 3.5-inch pieces of blocking and I spaced them evenly along the 2x4 that I'm going to attach to the wall. Then I attached all those pieces of blocking to the 2x4 using two 3-inch screws at each connection location. Also, make sure that you don't put a piece of blocking at a stud location because then you won't be able to screw the 2x4 long board to the wall. After assembling the hanging bracket, I positioned it so that it was level along that line. Then I used some more of those 3-inch screws to go through the mounting bracket and into the stud locations that I marked previously. And after hanging the mounting bracket, I confirmed level with an actual 6-foot level. Okay, I think it's dry enough. Let's take it inside. Now to actually hang this floating mantle, it's really simple. You're just gonna slide it over the mounting bracket that you just installed and push it so that it's flush with the wall. And to secure it in place, I'm just gonna use some 1-inch brad nails attached to either side of the floating mantle. And you could also probably hold it in place with some clear caulk along the back side, but I'm not doing that. And as always, let's take a quick reminder look at where this project started. And here's a look at the final result. Thank you guys so much for watching. If this video helped you out, I really would appreciate if you could drop a like down below and subscribe to the channel for more DIY content like this. Again, I have a PDF down below that has a little bit more information on this project. Feel free to pick that up. Thanks again. I'll see you on the next one.